Namaste and greetings. Dhruv, research intern at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all at IMPRI #Web Policy Learning. Today, we are gathered here for the week 6 of our 2-month immersive training course on understanding the nuances of climate change in Indian subcontinent, Cohort 2.0. I welcome you all to this transformative journey exploring sustainable, resilient, and innovative responses to our current climate challenges. The chair of the program is Ms. Bhargavi S Rao ji, independent researcher and educator, environment activist, Bengaluru, visiting senior fellow, IMPRI. The experts for the session today are Ms. Bhavreen Kandhari ji and Dr. Rajesh Kumar Dubey ji. The convener of this course are Mr. Tikendra Singh Panwar ji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, and Dr. Arjun Kumar ji. Proceeding further, we thank everyone for joining us today and appreciate your dedication in investing your time, energy, and commitment to gaining a profound understanding of climate change dynamic and development responses. We've also shared the course outline and reading resources in your emails for a kind perusal. Before we start today's session, I would like to state the housekeeping announcements. Please join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise, and please refrain from making general comments in the questions to save time. Uh, Unfortunately, Ms. Bhavreen Kandhari ji is not available with us today. She'll join in some time. So before that, I would like to invite Ms. Bhargavi S Rao ji for her remarks.
Thank you, Dhruv. And good afternoon, everyone. And to those of you celebrating the Ganesh festival, a happy Ganesh festive season. This festival is something very important in the context of waste and pollution, because I guess the festival initially meant to kind of remind all of us how transient we are on this planet. But today, these festivities seem to be the most polluting festivals across the country. Although there have been so many rules and regulations, but I'm sure most of you will find your cities and towns flooded with all kinds of waste in the coming days. So it's a very important day in that context, I felt. And today's sessions are going to focus one on air pollution and public health, and the other one is circular economy in the context of waste management. Air pollution today is one of the most pressing public health issues in India, with severe implications for both urban and rural populations. India faces some of the highest levels of air pollution globally, with a significant portion of its population, living in areas that exceed the World Health Organization's air quality guidelines. This has led to a growing public health crisis and concern, and city after city is now pressured with challenges to address this. So since Ms. Bhavreen is going to be delayed a little bit, whatever I wanted to share as my notes of the chair, we could probably bring it in as a discussion where we can discuss what do we think are the major sources of air pollution, what are the current respiratory and other diseases that we are facing today, and which are the most affected areas. While some big cities are very popular for their air pollution indicators, I think tier 2 cities are also catching up, so it'll be good to have a discussion on that front. Then also the many government initiatives that all of us are familiar with. So I thought all of that can be part of the discussion, and the emerging concerns. The second part of the day today is going to be on waste management and circular economy. This again, I think, is a very important topic because circular economy in waste management is aiming to move away from the traditional linear economy of where you take, make, and dispose and be done with. Instead of that, it focuses on minimizing the waste, reusing the materials, and regenerating some of the natural ecosystems. While this approach seems to be essential for reducing the environmental impact and conserving our natural resources and promoting sustainability, there are areas within the circular economy again which need to be truly understood and appreciated. Otherwise, there are challenges within that as well. So I hope during the session we will be able to understand how we design the waste itself. What do we call waste? So that will be very key. Then, we have, most of us have grown up in at a time when there was no waste, because everything at all points of time would be reused to its last bare thread, that there would hardly be any waste. But today we live in a world where every season we want different kinds of clothes, every season we want different kinds of food, every season we want different kinds of comforts within our households, within our offices. So in that context, how much do we really reuse and repair? And are we in a position to extend the product's life is something that we should be able to learn and understand in this session. I was also recently listening to a podcast where we were talking, where the host and the guests were talking about the same thing about circular economy, waste, and one of the speakers was talking about how at a point of time in her life, there was a point where she used to borrow clothes. If she had to go to a area that was very cold, she would borrow friends and other people's winter wear and go. But today most of us land up buying, or if you're going for a trek, you land up buying, and all of that just sits in your cupboards till the next trek comes up. And by the time a next trek comes up, those products are no longer fashionable, or there are 100 other products in the market that lure you to buy, and you'll end up buying so much more. So that podcast kind of helped everyone listening to it think about, can we go back to that world where we can do with old fashioned, can we do with borrowing stuff that we don't really use often. Those were very interesting conversations. Then, of course, the resource recovery is a big thing now in the context of circular economy. And waste to energy is also a technology that is being pushed in the circular economy. That is a little challenging because waste, no matter where we are going to incinerate it, it is definitely going to cause a lot of toxic gases. The dioxins and furans are the notorious gases that will definitely cause a lot of public health concern. And industrialists have been pushing that most of these incinerators do come with electrostatic precipitators and so on. But at the end of the day, that ash which is scraped out of all these chimneys will have to be landfilled somewhere safely. Otherwise, it is definitely going to cause a lot of problem, because it will have mercury, it will have lead, it will have a whole lot of other toxic materials. And particularly in areas where it rains a lot, it is very easy for these materials to get into the soil and water systems and food systems and affect public health in a very bad way. And the kind of diseases our population is facing today much of it can be directly linked to the kind of pollution we are facing. Then, of course, there are a whole lot of other biological and technical cycles that are part of the circular economy, and I'm sure we will learn a lot about it. Then the benefits of circular economy, yes, like the environmental benefits, the resource conservation, the economic benefits, the various jobs that it will help create, the many different kinds of livelihood at different levels. These are some key areas that again will require a lot of understanding and exploring. It will be very helpful for cities today where joblessness is a major problem. Then of course it definitely will probably help bring communities together and help some kind of community engagement, which might eventually also focus on public health by ensuring the waste doesn't reach the various places where it can get into our food and water systems. So in that context, I think there is so much more to learn and also understand the financing of the circular economy. How does the finance travel? And what is the economic viability of it, and how does the consumer behave? Then the many infrastructure related gaps. So these are areas that we will definitely learn from our speaker today, and also we'll also probably learn from the many examples of this entire circular economy in the waste management that is working well, and those that need better attention, those that need some reimagination and rethinking. So with those thoughts, I will close my remarks as the chair of the session, but we'll definitely open up for all our participants. You can either raise your hand or you can put it in the chat box. We could start off with what do you think are the major sources of air pollution? We could start off there.
Participants can either raise their hands or unmute themselves to ask their any question.
Or you could put it in the chat box as well. What do you think are the major sources of air pollution? It could be in your city, it could be in general, it could even be in your campus, in and around your neighborhoods. Okay, Abhinav Saxena says private mobility seems to be one of the highest contributors. Yes, very true. Vehicular emissions are the highest. Other sources?
Ma'am, even the construction waste or maybe the demolition waste is also one of the contributing factors to air pollution.
Exactly, very true. Most of our cities today, which are having the never-ending projects of, the metro line that are
Yes,
going to crisscross our city, is causing enough and more pollution. Then, of
yes,
course, all the building of the expressways, the overpass, underpass, every part of our city is
yes,
dug
yes,
up, and that is definitely adding a lot of dust. And this is a major contributor to the PM10 and PM 2.5.
yes.
While
Recently, Delhi also witnessed a very, a lesson of air pollution because of metro projects getting completed and infrastructural projects getting completed.
Oh, okay. That's really good to know that, with the
Yeah.
completion of projects, the pollution levels have come down.
Yes.
While vehicular emissions largely contribute oxides of nitrogen, carbon monoxide, and PM as well, construction dust is predominantly the PM, which is the suspended particulate matter, which is a major problem. Then, of course, if you are living close to industries, industrial pollution is another major contributor. And living in Delhi, to those of you living in Delhi, yes, I see a lot more now. Burning garbage, yes, very true. Landfill, fly ash, agriculture is the main in our area, hilly region, which cannot avoid since it is our livelihood. Yes, particularly, the crop residue burning. Then the landfill toxic emissions, yes. Yeah, I think we've covered all the major stubble burning. Yes, very true. Yeah, we've covered all the major sources of air pollution. That's excellent. So maybe we could kind of just brainstorm with the kind of health impacts that we are seeing because of this. Yes, pollen from weeds. It used to be a big problem in the city of Bengaluru many, many years ago. It was due to the Parthenium pollen, and they found a very nice remedy to that. The Horticultural Research Institute in Bangalore, they introduced a beetle from Mexico called the Zygogramma bicolorata. It's a small little beetle which looks like like any other beetle. It's green in color. It feeds on all the flowers, so that helped reduce the transfer of the release of pollen, and the pollen count in the atmosphere would increase the minute it starts drizzling and raining, because the raindrops would fall on the flowers of the Parthenium plant, and very high amounts of these pollen would be in the air, and it definitely triggered a whole lot of respiratory diseases among children, adults, and senior citizens as well. And to those who suffered from asthma, it had very bad impacts, because they became very ill due to the high pollen counts. Yes, so similarly, we have a whole lot of other weeds and some trees also. Tree pollen also can be allergic. Household air pollution is significantly reduced in most parts of the country due to lowering of solid fuel cooking, but it continues to be primary source in some areas, particularly impacting women and children. Very true, Abhinav. Even in urban areas, most of the construction work people who have temporary settlements, they tend to cook their food with firewood and waste and things like that, and that is definitely a major problem. It's not just in rural areas, it's also a problem in urban areas, in poorer settlements. Yes, Professor Biswas, that is the one. That's the beetle that I was talking about. Yeah, interestingly, my MPhil was in aerobiology. It is a subject where you study the pollen and spores in the air. And I monitored the pollen in the air for almost a year. And this was one of the findings about 30 years back. So the Bangalore University used to have a department, an aerobiology department, which used to give pollen counts to the newspapers every day. And Times of India would produce a small little column called the Pollen Watch of Bangalore. And that would indicate to people who are prone to respiratory diseases to kind of stay indoors or wear a mask or be careful during the high pollen season. And the Indian Institute of Science also had a lab where they would test you for pollen allergy at that point of time. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, so we could probably move on and think about what are the different kinds of health impacts due to air pollution. Yes, Vaishali is talking about the waste pickers, very true. Due to hazardous composition of solid waste and dumping of mixed waste in landfills, the waste pickers are more prone to diseases and health issues such as lung infection, skin infection. In women workers, particularly due to lack of proper sanitation facilities, they suffer from gastric and kidney issues. Very, very true. Despite all the rules and guidelines, even the COVID pandemic didn't seem to kind of shake up this system, because we continuously see the solid waste workers even today work without the proper protective gear. So they are definitely prone to a whole lot of pollution from waste. And even those working in landfills, they are constantly exposed to different kinds of toxic gases that are slowly emitting and escaping from the landfills. Yeah, they will definitely be prone not just to these diseases, but also to other infections that could lead to they because of the exposure. Lack of proper sanitation facilities can also trigger UTIs and other reproductive cycle related issues as well with them. Yeah, so Professor Biswas says there should be strict phytosanitary measures on species introduced for landscaping. Yes, I think again there the horticulture department and the forest department who are taking up landscaping should be very cautious of what kinds of plants are being introduced. Today we have a whole lot of ornamental plants everywhere, and we really don't know what kind of pollen they are releasing, whether they are allergic or not. There are very little aerobiological studies that are happening in the country today. Many of these departments are closed, so one really needs to open up these departments again and understand what is happening. Yes, Dr. Jay, thank you. Cancers and silicosis, the number of cancers across the country, across age groups, and cancers of the different organs of the body are mind-blowing because of the kind of pollution we are exposed to. And today, while we are focusing on air pollution, I think in the context of air pollution, it's largely respiratory diseases. It could be conditions like asthma, bronchitis, and other chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, which are largely referred to as COPD. Then, of course, cardiovascular diseases are also supposed to be triggered by air pollutants, particularly the fine particulate matter of 2.5, which is linked to increased risks of heart attack and stroke and hypertension. Then premature mortality is also something that is said to be caused by air pollution, where studies have shown that it contributes to hundreds of thousands of premature deaths annually. And particularly for women living in low income areas who have to walk long distances along highways and expressways where there is very high vehicular pollution. I think women themselves are exposed to such high levels that it probably even has its impacts on the fetus. And of course, studies are being done today, but a lot more studies are definitely needed. Then child health and development. About 2-3 years ago, there was a fantastic study in the New York Times It was based on a study done in Delhi where two children were shadowed through the day to understand their exposure. A child from a low income neighborhood and a child from an affluent income neighborhood was they were I think followed with a personal monitor to understand the kind of pollution they are exposed to, and that study caught a lot of attention from researchers and public health experts. You could probably search for it, and if I find it, I will put it in the chat box later. That was a very interesting study conducted in Delhi. I would urge all of you to read that. Yeah, so these are some major health related issues. Yeah, Yogendra says that a recent study suggests methane emission from landfill sites and other garbage dumping points is significantly increasing, causing air pollution. Moreover, the sanitary workers and communities living in these areas face several health issues. Very true. This is a community that is highly vulnerable in the context of climate change. They are already suffering the impacts of air pollution, and in the context of climate change, the exposure to various pollutants and inability to cope with both the pollution and climate change only increases for them, and that is a section of society that will uh, need a lot of attention, need a lot of handholding, and that is where one needs to ensure that all the city level climate action plans include them. And then animal health is also affected in peripheral industrial and rural areas. Very true. Skin problems and infertility in cattle has been observed. Yes, a lot of studies are coming in which are indicating the health impacts of air pollution. I'm so glad that we all seem to have kind of been so tuned into this topic, and that is really interesting. If any of you want to share anything more in the context of the many action plans that have been implemented, both from the government side and others, it could be civil society, it could be other research institutions, or your own organizations or your own research in this area, please raise your hand. It will be interesting to listen to you. Yes, thank you, Abhinav, again. This article seems to talk about caste is in the very air we breathe. Very true. Would you like to share what is in the article with our participants? Abhinav, you can unmute and speak.
So I read this article like a while back, and from how much I remember, I think it was about some quantitative analysis on the areas where people of the lower caste were predominantly living, and there they sort of mapped uh, the air quality levels, and I think they also used some NFHS data, but I don't really remember. But I think it was mostly around the areas and how sort of environmental injustice is sort of spatially also uh, not uniform or whatever in that sense.
Very true. Yes, thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. And yeah, I would urge everybody to read this article. Would anybody else like to share either an article that you have read or any initiative that has been started in your city, in your town, your institute, school, college, wherever, to understand air pollution? It could be simple installing a air monitor and somebody studying, collecting the data every day and studying it and interpreting that. It could be something as simple as that to something more complex you all are doing. I think this is a time we can make use of to learn from the peers. Otherwise, we hardly get this time. So I would urge all of you all to kind of um, share whatever you all know in this field.
Um, Ma'am, correct me if I'm wrong. I have a question to ask. There is a long-standing debate going on in news channels that going electric vehicles is not the solution to air pollution because making batteries or doing that kind of stuff is also environmentally harmful, and that in turn, creates more air pollution on the back end rather than on the front end. So I don't know much about that. Can you throw some light on that?
Sure, with what little I know, definitely.
Okay.
As we all know, making batteries is not a simple task, right? It involves a lot of materials, and that starts from mining of those materials to manufacturing the batteries itself, which is again a very water intensive process. And again, it causes a lot of pollution in the manufacture of the batteries themselves. And mining, we all know, causes a lot of pollution. The mining dust and exposure to mining areas leaves the miners with a whole lot of respiratory diseases. And most of these precious metals are mined in areas where there's a lot of human rights violation. And in some areas, we also know that, it is children who are mining, who are part of the mining process. So there is a whole lot of that pollution. And then you bring in this battery into the city, and we seem to be feeling nice about driving around in an electric vehicle, while the more battery you use, obviously someone somewhere has to pay the price. And then batteries again have to be charged, right? Overnight you're charging, and whether you're using renewable energy or even thermal energy or hydel energy, it is coming at a huge cost of somewhere coal being mined, a thermal power plant spewing fly ash along with a whole lot of air pollution. Or it could be, even if it is solar or wind, it has definitely displaced agropastoral communities. It comes at a cost of their life and livelihood. Or it could even be coming across natural habitats, displacing or threatening the very existence of some of the wildlife. So it comes at a huge ecological price, the electric vehicles also. So in that context, it truly is not green.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, so mobility in cities, it's fine if buses are electric buses, because at least a large number of people are traveling in that. And even if it is electric cars, unless two or more people are traveling, I think it's the same when you use a diesel car or a petrol car, because here you can't see the pollution right there, but it is happening somewhere else.
Uh, Good
Yes,
evening.
doctor. Yes,
Nice
Dr.
to meet you.
Bamadev. Yeah,
Yeah, at this juncture, and I would like to add our experience, Kathmandu Valley, and
please.
Kathmandu Valley is just like a pot. In pot, around the pot, there are clouds. The pollutant, clouds in and around during February, May, June. Before monsoon, and it happens by two cause. One is there are a brick factory. From there they burn the something that is not good for the health. And some it is a learn that some even burn the tire of the vehicle. And sometimes the neighboring countryside people, they burn the fodder due to fodder. And the cloud makes a a kind of round. And if there is no wind, it does not move anywhere. And it makes, very suffocation like that, for Kathmandu it is. And now the government, has formulated the policy that the brick should not be, manufactured inside the valley. It should go out, from the valley. After that, to some extent, the pollution like that has been diminished. Diminished. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your experience from Kathmandu. Anybody else? Anything you've observed, seen, read?
May I add another
Sure, sure.
thing?
Go ahead.
And it is, as you already mentioned, in those days when we were child, we had to borrow. We usually borrow the cloth, even cloth. There were there were few clothes, in Dasara, or in Phagu Purnima, they usually provide the household member, our guardian, they provide us the cloth, two clothes, and within a year we had to, chew the year with two clothes, and it was a true fact. And even I used to go to school. It is a far from my, that was countryside where I live, Kalanki. And I had to go by walk, at least 1 hour, and to reach public school. And without a shoe, that is even my experience, And, as we in touch with the world, as we globalize, and the commodity began to flow, and the goods, commodity, ideas, all things came, and as we reduce the barrier, in the name of globalization, and what are our needs, uh, the basic needs are our need, I think, but beyond capacity, the people are importing. And suppose Nepal, Nepal, it has a population 3 crore, 3 crore, and it import, 5 crore equivalent, umbrella from China. See, where does it flows? It flows to south. That is India, and as we randomly, consume and intake, began to consume or intake the commodity and goods, that also has created havoc for us. I think, I may be wrong, and if we minimize, if we, maintain the economy of thrift, that also, paves the way for, reducing the externality, at I think so. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bamdev. I think you shared a very nice example. It all goes back to, a point where we have to probably learn from our grandparents and other ancestors, a very minimalistic life where little was more. They would not have anything beyond two pairs of clothes and one pair of chappals, or even probably no sandals. Um, I think it's really, we will probably get there. We will forcefully get there, because this system is definitely not going to last. Uh,
Yeah,
it will
we can't move, back. Even we can, we could practice like this, living with minimum, things, Suppose
Right.
in even in our house, there are so many things. I call to my wife. let's throw and give it to the other guys, they may use the thing, and the hoarding habit, of the people, that
Right.
has also created the problem, Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, drawing. Thank you so much for drawing, attention to that. We will all forcefully, definitely get into that stage in life where little will be more, probably. Yes. Yeah, and again, rethinking about air pollution in our cities. All of us listed all the major sources. So from the list that we just kind of created, I think vehicular pollution is definitely a big contributor, and construction and waste, whether it is landfill or incineration, all of that is also contributing a lot. So the easy way would be for our governments to rethink the entire city level transport. So that is where we need to move towards a sustainable urban mobility, where if every ward can have proper pedestrian paths, proper bicycling lanes, roads which have some kind of lane discipline. If we can all increase, if all our cities can increase public transport, be it buses or trains or metros, whatever is possible in every city, I think that is the way forward. But none of our city administrators and the decision making bodies seem to be thinking in that way. City after city is coming out with newer plans to build newer roads. For example, in Bangalore, now we are thinking of a tunnel road all around Bangalore, like the one in Paris, to ease the traffic situation. 10 years from now, we will again be in the same space where even our tunnel roads will be filled, and the roads above and below everywhere will be choked. Because I was recently reading that there are some 70 lakh units of cars that have not been sold. So in order to make sure those cards are sold, you need to build roads. So it's like, the dog chasing its own tail. There is absolutely no end to this madness. That will come up in the context of, again, next, like if we want our GDP to be growing, do we want these kind of industries, or can we replace these big automobile industries with something else? So it's a very vicious cycle. That is something we need to really hold our decision making agencies accountable, and it is really time, because this kind of growth can't happen. Bangalore is completely choked. I was in Chennai 3 weeks back. Chennai is again completely choked again. Most of you here are in Delhi, and you know what the Delhi traffic is like. So how long are we going to go on like this? If each of us are going to have 2-3 more cars, our cities will definitely be choked. So if we have to find a solution to it, I think there are many cities in Europe which have set a good example, and that is probably the way to go, where you make way for pedestrians and you make way for non-motorized ways of transport. Bring back the cycle rickshaws, turn those into e-rickshaws. That makes sense. I have seen e-rickshaws in many cities now. I've seen them in, I think, Guwahati. I've seen them in Jaipur. At least in the central business districts, wherever possible, it will be good to have e-rickshaws. At the same time, ensure pedestrian paths and cycling lanes, so that it also helps increase the public health indicators, given that most of our cities are capital cities for diabetes and hypertension. I think people need to exercise. So this would be a great way to tackle two major problems. So this requires a lot of public action is what I feel, and civil society is playing a role in major cities. Citizen groups have come forward together demanding these things. Ward by ward, there are some changes in some cities. Some neighborhoods have, of course, the affluent neighborhoods somehow seem to have the bandwidth to negotiate better with the city municipalities for better footpaths, better roads, cycling lanes, so on and so forth. But for an entire city to be you know, where people can walk easily, it's going to take some time. Bangalore does have some kind of policies today, like a footpath policy and parking policy and things like that, but a long way to go if we have to really cut down our vehicular emissions. And in the name of cutting down vehicular emissions, metros are being built left, right, center, everywhere. Again, the alignment of the metro is something we need to really engage with, metro developers, because it is having its own challenges. While in Delhi, it is working extremely well. In Bangalore, it doesn't really connect the entire city. The last mile connectivity is a huge problem. So a lot of things need to be ironed out, and I think for this public participation is key. That is something that is lacking in all these areas of decision making. So, but I think a lot more awareness will help push people to engage more and participate better, and truly come out with solutions that can be made feasible in the long run. So that definitely can be done with vehicular emissions, but again, with industrial emission, I think it is important to hold the industries accountable, make sure the regulators work properly, ensure the pollution control boards in each of the cities are making data available to the public, ensuring that the compliances are in place, and all the industries are keeping up their promises. That responsibility largely lies on the pollution control boards. Then with waste management, particularly burning of waste is a huge issue everywhere. That again requires local action. And also with respect to construction activities, we don't see any spraying of water to minimize dust, or spraying of that mist to minimize dust. None of those practices are in place. At least pushing construction activities to kind of maintain those basic guidelines will help minimize waste, and at least reduce exposure during the day is something I feel will help. So yes, Manisha.
Ma'am, as we know that our nation is a democratic nation, so I think the day when democracy is at peak, I think all these problems can be solved. It should be ruled by people, not just the government.
Yes, so that's where we need to understand governance. So what is happening today is the 73rd and the 74th Amendment, which came about in 1992, which decentralized the entire governance systems, have never been implemented. So typically how planning should happen is every city is divided into wards, and every ward is divided into area sabhas. So within the area sabha, people should come together and plan how they want their area in terms of all the provisions given in the 12th schedule. So then those plans have to be consolidated at the ward level of each ward. and all the ward level plans have to be consolidated at, if it is a city like Bangalore, there is something called the Metropolitan Planning Committee that has to consolidate all these plans, and then that has to pass these plans to something called the Finance Commission, and the Finance Commission has to say, okay, this is feasible, this is not feasible, this is expensive, etc., etc. There's a lot of back and forth, and then after everything is fixed, the Finance Commission will pass on these plans with the recommendations to the concerned state government, and then the money has to flow back in the same way, so that every ward will implement these plans that the people of that ward have asked for. So since the 73rd and 74th has not been constitutional amendments have not been implemented at all in its letter and spirit, what has happened is we have created parastatals everywhere. It is these parastatals that are building our roads, supplying electricity, supplying water, managing sewage, managing emissions. Everything today is managed by the parastatals. The parastatals work directly with the government. The government and the parastatals are hand and glove with each other, and there's also a revolving door within each other. So those in the government will be part of the parastatal, and those with the part of the parastatal will be part of the government. And people have no say at all, and you can't hold these parastatals accountable to anything that's happening in the city. So there is no public consultation process at all, right? So the model of how our cities are being governed and how the cities are growing and how we are managing our problems is completely in violation of, the constitutional provisions. So that needs to change.
Yeah, ma'am, nothing is happening properly. Nobody is really concerned, like especially the government.
Okay.
It's-
We will hold that thought for now. I see two more hands raised. Yes, Vaishali,
yeah,
followed
sure.
by Priyanka.
I'm listening to all the discussion with respect to how that vicious cycle of everything coming back to a circle, and listening to Manisha's concern as well. With respect to what I've observed through my studies as well is when it comes to local governance, when we speak about public participation aspect, right? If we speak about a very, since we are experiencing so much of urbanization, and due to so much of congestion in the urban areas now, such as you have quoted Bangalore, Delhi, Chennai, if you look at very small towns, right, like Shimla, as a matter of fact, they have completely exhausted the land resources at the moment, and they're planning to expand beyond the urban areas, such as census towns nearby, the rural areas as well. They're going to create like an urban agglomeration, such as, because they have started to expand their institutes as well around those areas. So in a way, they're and also those rural areas are showing features and characteristics of like an urban areas as well, due to the population size now. So what is happening in that aspect is, when we are speaking about local governance and public participation, is what I have noticed and what I've observed particularly is, there's a lot of economically driven people at the moment over there, due to obviously the fact that they see so much of uh, prosperity happening over those urban centers. So they also wish to have that same stature as well. So in that regard, that environmental conservation is kind of getting diminished in that respect. Because I'll just give you a very small example. For example, if you'll see all these national universities coming across in various states, so they are mostly located in a very outskirt area, and in that respect, there's a lot of employment that is happening to those local people. So when I say employment, it is with respect to having a small, such as providing a taxi service to the students. Now, when we speak about vehicular pollution and environmental conservation, now if you look at the movement of vehicle over that small area, is so much in a like a 1 day span that it completely like in a way, I would say disregard the environmental conservation aspect, because obviously there's ease of accessibility that the students are asking. At the same time, there's also a drive for some kind of employment that the locals are also having. So in that respect, there's a conflict of creating that economic environment. So that balance is kind of happening, and I have seen that environment is getting compromised, not just by the local people but the government as well, definitely. But yeah, we are not finding any kind of uniform driven agenda with respect to environment to kind of come together and think about, okay, no, if we are planning towards adopting a particular economic agenda, then there should be some kind of environmental aspect as well that should be involved, such as not cutting the mountains like like not creating a petrol pump where it is not required at the moment. And we can look forward to a place, because I feel in approximately it's a kilometer or approximately 5 kilometer distance they have created a petrol pump after cutting a mountain. I mean, that was actually not required. And contrary to this, there was a disaster that happened right next to that petrol pump a few years back, because of which they had to there was a landslide that happened which cut off a one complete area. And now they had constructed a petrol pump because of all the drilling that happened and the monsoon season, which is coming across very drastically nowadays. So in a way, it has impacted those areas. At the same time, it is a hazard to the locals. But again, we don't see that that drive to come towards conservation aspect. They're still okay with the economic aspect at the moment. So I feel that is something, when an extreme situation happens. When I say extreme situation, it means landslide, which involves taking away of the houses of their, in that landslide. That's when I think so the call for conservation will come up, but not before that. So at the same time, as ma'am, you have rightly said, there's requirement for awareness, the right information, the right community engagement that is required. I feel that is lacking at the local governance level at the moment. So in a way, we have compromised the environment. So that will take a very long time to come, because I feel people have come to a realization only with instances, hazards, and with disaster. That's what my observation has been so far.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I will let Priyanka also share her thoughts, and then I will come back to your point of setting up these universities or setting up of even how city planning has changed today. I'll come back to that point. Okay. Yeah, Priyanka, please share your thoughts.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you, Ashali, for that wonderful insight as well. My question, or sort of an observation with regards to air pollution, was also this, that not only does the source of a pollutant matter, but also how far can a pollutant travel matters equally. This actually came to my mind because of the whole annual Delhi and Haryana crop burning issue. That brings this to mind. When I say that, then what occurs to me is that these studies need to happen also on the very geological level as well. Study of the wind direction and all as well would affect how far a pollutant will travel, because not only then could be two situations where a pollutant from its source might not affect the source region, but it might greatly affect the region where it ends up. Following up with this, a few years back, I was reading about the deposition of black carbon or soot in the Himalayan ranges is now being studied, and the sensitivity of Himalayan ecology or the flora to that deposition is also being studied now. Of course, the impact of that deposition is that is being reported is that it could possibly lead that, since that deposition would affect the snow albedo, that the snow would now not reflect as much of the solar radiation as it should, and that might lead to faster glacial melting. And that definitely does ring a bell of concern, because of course, the flash floods and all that are observed, specifically in the areas of Himachal or Uttarakhand. So those were the 2 points that I noticed, and any feedback from you is very welcome.
Thank you so much for drawing our attention to that. Yeah, I'll first go back to what Vaishali raised. Thanks for sharing that. You know, this has become the way of urban planning today. City after city comes out with its comprehensive city master plans, but these city master plans do not necessarily showcase these new projects that are in the pipeline. And then even the city master plans are not really open to the public. They are just exhibited as some colorful maps in some center of the city space, and public are expected to come there and give their comments. Given how choked our city is, hardly anybody can make it to those meetings slash exhibitions where these master plans are exhibited, and not everybody even understands maps, right? How many of us can even read maps? So you really won't understand much when you read those maps, unless when a bulldozer comes to bulldoze a particular settlement. So one is that is how the city master plans are made. And secondly, these grand projects of creating universities or creating airports, for instance, that has become another new phenomena in India, although the global north is slowly moving away from that, what is popularly referred to as the aerotropolis now. So you create a fancy airport and then allow the economy around it to take shape by itself, because once you put an airport there, you will need taxi services, you will need restaurants, you will need hotels for people to stay overnight. You will obviously have a lot of transit passengers, and then you will need so many other facilities, right? So all of that will start coming in and around the airport. That is exactly what happened in Bangalore. And many cities today have 2 airports, and we see how the area around the airport is developing. Yes, it might provide jobs, but the jobs that it provides are all it is not it's mostly the blue collar jobs, right? What we can call them. When the construction phase is happening, there will be a lot of people who will be employed. But after the construction is over, the local people will at the most get a security guard position or a gardener position or a domestic help or something like that. Nothing beyond that. And many instances are, these people who get those jobs once would have been owners of that land, and today they will be, people who are doing very menial jobs like wiping a toilet seat in an airport or sweeping and things like that, which really brings down their dignity of who they were and what they were to what they are now. And they are also at the mercy of the manager to who they report. They themselves will not necessarily be on the payroll of either the airport or the university. They're all on contract labor. And at the end of the day, when land is taken over, these people have to survive somehow. And if a thorough study is actually done, it is not as nice as we think it is when it comes to how these people survive. Every time I travel by a taxi to and fro from the airport, I make it a point to have a conversation with them. I even have conversations with auto rickshaw drivers sometimes, just to understand where they come from, what they did in the past, how did they land up here. Story after story are very sad stories, because at the end of the day, they are only trying to make ends meet. Most of them have taken loans either to buy the auto rickshaw or to buy the car, and they also have to support their families, and they are working for 18 hours a day minimal just to make sure they are able to pay that EMI. And many people who log on to their the mobility apps of Uber and Ola and all, they also have a lot of problems, because those systems are not paying them as much they thought they would pay initially. So all of this looks very nice, but it is having its own social impact, and it has torn families apart. It has changed the social fabric of society in these villages. Studies of this kind are largely lacking. Very few studies exist to understand what happens when, say 5 villages have parted their land to a big university project or to an airport project. What are they doing now? 5 years after they parted with their land and they got their compensation money, what are they doing now? Did their children make it to school? Did their children finish college? Are they in better jobs? Do they have better public health access? Do they have access to mobility? These are questions that have not been answered because such studies are largely absent. But if at all a study like that is done, we will definitely find that a large number of people who have parted with their land for these kind of projects are finding it extremely difficult to make a living. On the outside, it will all look nice, but deep down, there are a whole lot of problems. So this has become the new way of creating newer neighborhoods in cities, and this has become a new way of urbanizing, which is only adding to the air pollution. So you create a university outside the city and then start a metro line to it. You create an airport outside the city and dig a expressway, dig a tunnel road, create a railway line, create a metro line. You can keep creating all those things which are only going to increase carbon emissions. It is only going to increase air pollution. And the irony of that is all that, city after city today is signing up for the Paris Climate Accord. But when it comes to doing their own homework on ground, they are far from what they have committed to, right? So these remain the problem, and the only way to address is, again, I would again reinforce that awareness at all levels, because media doesn't cover all of this. There's only some amount of stuff that is reported in the local newspapers. Unless people read a lot more of the civil society research and reports, or university related research papers, and if that is demystified by the media into a local common language article, people will really never understand, and that is where the huge gap lies. Yeah, thank you, Vaishali, for that, and thank you, Priyanka, for drawing attention to the air pollution, the black carbon, and how it is impacting the melting of snow, and how it is also impacting agriculture there. In another program I have been part of, we've been talking to farmers in Nepal who've been sharing how their entire farming cycle has gone for a spin, because they're not able to do farming like before because of the melting of snow. And the implications of that people will know only in the coming years, because it will obviously relate to challenges at the food at the household level. What is happening to these farming families? How are they coping with this stress? These are things that again, a lot more study is required there, and thanks so much for drawing attention to that issue. Yeah, I see one more hand up. Dhruv, would you like to share? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm an architect by profession. So as you were talking about the plans, the master plans that come out. So I have noticed that the problem with the master plans is that because the contractors or the urban designers or the planners are paid by the volume of concrete that they use a lot of concrete to build pavements, to build roads, to build the infrastructure, that that does not allow the natural water cycle to flow in, as in for the groundwater replenishment and everything. So that becomes a problem which we don't see on the maps or maybe on the finances or any other thing, because everybody is there to make profits. And pavements, that water seepage could happen. And the major reasons for a lot of urban floods and a lot of climate change is because the urban heat island effect that gets created because of this large patches of concretes that we guys only propose. And water is not allowed to go into, and water table to increase. And second of all, so recently I had an opportunity during my studies to visit slums and study their waste management and waste disposal methods. And it was a slum redevelopment project here in Ahmedabad only. So I'm currently pursuing my master's in Ahmedabad. So the average urban household that creates waste is, according to standards, is 750 grams. But these people living in slums with slum redevelopment projects are only creating 300 grams of waste. And these people reuse their plastic, these people reuse their resources, and they are not like us. And that really made me feel like we are an educated idiot who uses plastics again and again, Amazon, Flipkart, Swiggies, and whatnot. And these people had their own small composting pits in their around their homes as well. These people would use those dabbas or maybe those packaging material for their household things and everything. And that really made me change thinking that why can't I do something like that? Or why can't we use things like which we could reuse or maybe recycle to? Because ultimately it comes to us only. Whatever we go comes around, what goes around comes around only. So that's the main thing that we as a society, or we as aware people also need to, bring into practice for some kind of things. And lastly, to conclude, the smart cities mission, with respect to the smart city mission, the major drawback or maybe thing that I would like your opinion on is we are not able to manage our air, water, or maybe solid waste in any which way possible. But we call our cities to be smart or smart cities and incorporate smart dustbins or maybe any which way sensors can be put anywhere, but the general behavior or the citizen behavior is not changing. So in regards to climate change or air pollution or water pollution and whatnot. So I would really want you to enlighten us on that, definitely.
Thank you for drawing the group's attention to this whole pouring of concrete, glass, and granite and steel everywhere. This is I think, a very Indian, sickness to make sure even the green spaces are filled with this, because I see that most of our parks, Bangalore does have a lot of parks. Every neighborhood has parks today, minimum of 2 to 3 parks. First of all, the parks have been turned into ornamental gardens because we have all these exotic species there, no indigenous species at all. And the grass is some high-end hybrid grass which children cannot tread on, which is so different from the kind of parks I grew up in. I grew up in a neighborhood where there was a huge park where we could just run wild on the grass, roll on the grass, and it was some indigenous grass at that time. But now it's all exotic varieties. Other than a little jogging path, you're not supposed to go anywhere else. You're only allowed to sit on those benches which are assigned for sitting, and you definitely can't tread either this side or that side. And on either side, in all these parks, we have steel barricades. That just, defeats the whole purpose of making a green park. In the midst of all the greenery, why would you want to put steel barricades? That steel looks so ugly there. And then on top of the steel, there are flexes of all kinds of, religious gods and goddesses, to everything celebrating every festival or season or something, or even it is wishing politicians for their birthdays and things like that. So if you want to make a place ugly, all these things are brought in. There's absolutely no aesthetics in it. And in such a context, I just keep wondering who even designs them. So, like you would probably agree, the city planning authorities have no architects there. They're all civil engineers. And for a civil engineer today, it is only about pouring concrete, cement, and glass. I think the civil engineering course has to be redesigned in the country. That's a problem everywhere. That's how our cities are being designed. And in the context of smart cities, there's nothing smart about it. It's we briefly did a studies a couple of years ago, and we found that in most of the smart city projects, the projects had been chosen to be implemented in areas which already had all of those things in place. So there was an overlap of the projects, and the projects were chosen in areas where the elite lived. It was not benefiting the poor in any which way. And then most of the projects had very high technocentric approaches, which again was not accessible to all. And they claimed that there was public consultation, but all the public consultation had happened over email and WhatsApp messages and phones and things like that, phone interviews and things like that. So obviously the poor have never been consulted. So it has been a waste of money, largely. There is a report done by the Center for Financial Accountability, a Delhi-based think tank, which has looked at the finances that has gone into the smart cities, and that's an excellent report. I would urge all of you all to browse through that, because that will give you an indication of how the entire smart city project came through, and how it was done, who paid, who lost, who benefited. All of that comes across very nicely in that. Yeah, I think I addressed all 3 questions of yours. Vaishali, yes, I see your hand up.
Yes, ma'am. I had 2 points here. Sorry, since I have done my study in waste management with respect to the hilly areas. So how Dhruv emphasized on the fact that the informal settlement have this habit of repurposing their waste, like in the way of like getting a Flipkart dabba, repurposing it and using it. At the same time, there was a study that was conducted that had highlighted the situation of like the basic services that will be provided to informal settlements, and it was found that due to lack of those daily waste collection services that was not being provided to them, obviously this brings across the social differences and a dimension here. So that is, I feel, another reason for that repurposing of the waste, because for any community which has that service doesn't require that much of thinking to do, to find out, okay, where we are supposed to, give our waste away. Because even for a locality, now we have got flat system, society system. If you go to Bangalore, I know someone, because as part of my study, I had interacted with them. His name is Mr. Bidyut. He's in Bangalore itself. In his society, he has created this composting system, and he gets all the waste and encourages everybody in the society to kind of put the at least the kitchen waste, and then they at the same time repurpose the paper waste and the plastic. There's a proper system that few of the people have started off in urban areas. At the same time, ma'am, as you have highlighted the technological aspect challenging smart cities, overlapping is definitely one of them. Because if I'll give you one example of my area, which is the Dharamshala Municipal Corporation, as part of the as part of the smart city mission, they had installed these street lights, which was not required because we were already operating on a battery, the solar powered street light. And now in one lane we have 4 street lights as part of smart city, just because they want to get off the budget. They want to show it at the end that, okay, we have invested something. And at the same time, when you talked about the challenge of using the right technology, so in Netherlands, for the secondary storage of waste, for example, if you don't have a daily waste collection system in your locality, there's a we say that as community dustbins that are placed nearby areas. You will find it in public spaces, you'll find it nearby outside the youth societies, and so on and so forth. So in Dharamshala Municipal Corporation, they installed this underground dustbin system with a lid. They bifurcated into non-biodegradable and biodegradable, and it was adopted and taken from the Netherlands example, because they had a system like that. And at the same time, since that it's an underground garbage collection, it requires a magnetic instrument to take out that dustbin. So for that, there's a big truck that comes in those small narrow lanes of mountains to lift that 2 dustbins to take out those waste from that underground. It was done in order to ensure that there's not waste which is visible in the public, at the same time to avoid monkeys coming across and taking out that garbage. But at the same time, this system failed because when they had installed the system, there was no right information among the people. There was no kind of awareness generation or information dissemination that was happening among the people, that how to use the technology. Because we were at the initial stage, we started to see the lid coming off. There was separation of that infrastructure. So you can see that how the system was functioning. You can see garbage lying outside. Despite having a proper cover area, they were not putting it inside. It was getting stuffed because for good 1 week, they were not coming to empty the underground garbage collection system, because at the same time there was a challenge of road and the technology, that the truck was so huge, it was very difficult for getting traffic moving if that truck is placed at one place to empty the garbage. So there was a lot of non-thought process that was put into installing this system. At the same time, now what they have started is an MRF system. It's a material recovery facility. So in hilly areas, especially because you will see there's a lot of tourism that gets attracted, and there is plastic bottle waste and wrappers and everything that is generated. So MRF is usually to get the dry waste, try to segregate the plastic out of the wet waste, and they have set up that system. But again, there's a particular challenge that has come across, is that they have created that facility right next to a water body, which is again a very big violation of the solid waste management rules 2016 one. So when we are speaking about all these innovation and adaptation, and then there's again a challenge of still not sticking to the rules, and still not adhering to that planning process. You need a proper research, you need proper study to kind of understand your first of all demography, your people, what kind of waste composition is coming across. So that preliminary research is lacking in such kind of processes when we are trying to make that innovation or technological adoption process. So that is also something that I have observed through my study in that waste management, apart from all other aspect that is going across. But definitely, as you had mentioned, so that came across my mind. So I thought I'll bring it across as an example.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful example. That just shows that how, we want to replicate something that we have seen in the global north, and we think that will fix the problem. But then if you don't have a buy-in from the local people, if you don't involve them in the decision making, then there is no ownership of that project, and it just falls flat. It all that investment will just go. But if only local people had been made aware of how that system works, some awareness had happened, some kind of situational analysis done, and then implemented, maybe adapting to local conditions, such projects might work better. But unfortunately for city governments implementing something is like on a blindfolded mission mode. You just have to finish one project after the other, and then after you implement it, it's done and dusted kind. So that is where most of these new things, there is no uptake of it by the local people, and then things don't work. So the lessons from these examples are that it's best to involve the local people. Let them see what is the kind of waste that they are generating. Can they decide what can be done with that waste? Is there something that they themselves can collectively do? So if a street full of people decide to compost and decide to have a community garden, then on their terraces or in an open space close by like a park or something, then there is collective imagination and there is ownership, and it will work for everybody, instead of something that is being pushed on to a community. And the same thing with the dry waste also. If collectively a street can decide, we are not going to order anything that comes in plastic or something like that unless it is medicine or something that is life saving. So you should allow people to kind of imagine and come together and nurture those possibilities. But unfortunately, we are a little far from it. But yes, there are good examples here and there. So it is a time for us to think about those alternatives and see if those alternatives can be adapted everywhere, and change to the local needs, and move forward. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
I would like to add on it.
Yes,
Madam.
Dr. Bamadev.
You know, after COVID, the local government of Kathmandu, it encouraged to have, roof gardening like that,
Mm-hmm.
and the purpose was, to have a greenery, in the city area in one side. The another side, the garbage collection, there was a cow on very uncertainty, no one would like to, pick up the garbage like that, and the delivery, the landfill side, it was blocked, due to, if the city people, does garbage and they intend to throw in countryside, and there is a cows, usually happens cows. And what the local government and the municipality did, and they distribute, it distribute, to household, the compost, compost fertilizer making, drums like that, and you put some medicine, and if something comes from kitchen or kitchen garden, and put there and have a fertilizer, and that you can use for the the gamala and the fruits and vegetable, for the kitchen garden and rooftop garden. And that was very that outcome became very fruitful. And update, still the people are doing. In my house we are also doing, except some plastic material, we do not throw the, the thing that we consume or intake, and in Kathmandu, they are practicing like this, and this also reduce the, listen the problem of, pollution, or something like that, related to, climate, hazard. And this is this may be good practice, to learn. I think, I think, instead of importing sophisticated thing, in the name of a donation, grant like that, Why should we, share our, practice that is happening for the decade or years, and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing that example. Anybody else would like to share? I'm also sharing on the in the chat box the two studies conducted by Center for Financial Accountability. One is a 7 years of smart city mission in India. That's a very interesting review that highlights everything that we just discussed. Then also there's another little booklet on the financing of smart cities. I would urge all our participants to read both, browse through both of it. That will give you an idea of what smart cities have been. Yeah.
Um, uh, Ma'am, you talked about citizen and community participation in curbing the climate change, and so there was a study done 5 or 4 years ago, wherein in Pennsylvania there was an industry near the Pennsylvanian city, and people were given small smartphone AI apps in which they could smell and they could tell in and feed in the data that they're smelling bad or they're feeling foul smell according to the industrial waste. And the municipality would analyze that data day in, day out. And for 7 years, the Pennsylvania city has curbed the city pollution because of citizen participation and community feedback in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And recently also, NIUA also launched small youth mission in which they are encouraging people from all across the geography. It's on the LinkedIn as well, all across the geography of India to put in there and suggest that there are a bunch of answers and questions that you need to answer related to citizen participation through climate change. Professor Debulina Kunduji is the pioneering that, and it's a very good initiative.
Uh, uh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so I'm not saying that studies like this will not help, but it will definitely be from unless those who can't afford to have a cell phone are given cell phones as part of the study, taught how to use, how to send the message, how to record. Uh, then if you're asking a general population saying send a message, then only those of us who have access to all of this will be able to do. In which case we will not get to hear from those communities who don't have this privilege. But if it is done in a meaningful way where they're also onboarded with training, then definitely the data that will be captured will be very rich and it will help in moving the decision to be fair and just. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I had a question regarding the citizen behavior when it comes to solid waste management practices. Like, what would be more effective? Should we go for a more incentivization route, or would it be a penalization route for that? Because obviously there is a need that, first of all, it has to be a refuse, reduce, recycle kind of thing. Refusal can only come from a community behavior. It is not going to be a one person thing. That would not end up. So a scaling up of good practice like that, how can that be implemented? Could it be implemented, first of all? And then since I mentioned recycling, I would also like to know about your thoughts on recycling. Like, do you think it's a good practice, healthy for the environment? Because there are some varied views over the same. Yeah, that's
Yeah, so when it comes to waste, I think the first thing is, it has to be mandated that waste has to be segregated at source, no matter where it is. And I think all households and institutions and everybody should be encouraged to compost their wet waste. And in case there are challenges of you're not able to compost it at the household level, then there should be something available at the street level where you can contribute, and where there is at least one person appointed who can maintain that. Then largely the wet waste is taken care of locally. Like, I can understand senior citizens or families with very small children who may not be able to do it, or people with disabilities and people who are sick. In those cases, I think getting the wet waste at the street level and composting it would be fine. And the next thing the city municipality should do is penalize those people who are not doing this, at least all the able-bodied people. Charge a small fee for collecting and composting it from those who are not able to do it at the household level. And then incentivize in terms of, if you do manage to compost and produce a harvest of compost, the city municipality should be able to buy it from you. So there is a guaranteed market for what you are producing. Then everybody will, pay attention to it and do it well. And there should be a certain standard in which the compost should be. It is not any rocket science. It is something doable at the household level. And in Bangalore particularly, there is this organization called the Daily Dump, who've come out with 3 terracotta pots, one above the other, and you just dump all your wet waste in the topmost, and by the time it is 45 days, the topmost will be full, and then you bring in the second one, and by the time it is 90 days, the first pot will be ready to harvest, and then you just leave it in the bottommost pot for another few days till it is completely fine, and you can even sieve it so that you get very fine compost. So when there are these kind of facilities available which you can invest at the household level and take care of it, then you're reducing this huge problem of waste being transported out of the city. So facilities like this should be available for low income households, because they may not have the space. A locality of say 30 houses should have one compost pit, and compost should be bought from them, so that it's an incentive for them. So things like that will largely take care of the wet waste. When it comes to the dry waste, much of it is recycled today, but those which cannot be recycled, I think that it should go back to the corporates and the industries who are producing it, and help them rethink the entire packaging. If it cannot be recycled, or if it is going to emit all kinds of harmful gases and materials in that process, that product should be banned from manufacturing, right? Plastic is a big nuisance today, yes, but then plastic is also playing a very crucial role in public health. If we are sick, it is that plastic tube that runs, brings medicine through IV into our bodies. You'll be strapped onto a ICU, and it's plastic all around. So that is plastic you cannot be done with. You need plastic there. But everywhere else, there can be alternate ways, right? Many years ago, when we were growing up, milk used to come in bottles. We just had to clean it, rinse it, and leave it outside, and the milkman would take those bottles back. It was the same thing with all the the soft drinks. But it is only now that the market is flooded with plastic. So this is a question that needs to go back to the industries, and governments should take serious action. And for governments to take serious action, there should be a complete boycotting of these products in universities, educational institutions, all other offices and all that. Recently I was at a very big university, and in their cafeteria I was shocked to see all of these soft drink plastic bottles and a whole lot of other unhealthy foods in plastic containers. I was totally shocked. So while students might enjoy eating the product, I think there has to be some kind of balancing it out. There are other healthy options available, and in the context of public health, certain foods themselves should be banned. You know, the kind of oils in which they are fried, the containers in which they are stored. I think that way our public health departments and all the Bureau of Indian Standards and so on, FSSAI, AI, and a whole lot of other agencies who look at standards, they need to wake up a little bit more and pay attention to this. So then the whole recycling industry will get simplified, and alternatives will definitely be an option. It is not that we can't think of alternatives. It might, some may be expensive, some there are options available, like you know, in many places we see that today the palash leaves are used, or the banana leaves are used, the plantain leaves are used, or even the arecanut leaf made plates and stuff are used. So there are a whole lot of other options that can be tried and tested and figured out. It's just that there isn't much being invested in that for the R&D perhaps. There is no will because we've all become too comfortable with plastic. That is what I feel. And thermocol is another very big problem, given that everything today comes wrapped in thermocol, particularly if you're ordering. It's not just the appliances, a whole lot of other things as well. So there has to be standards even in packing certain things. So everywhere, at every stage, everywhere, a whole lot of reimagination is required, and that reimagination will happen only when there are certain guidelines and rules. All our guidelines and rules are, you know, things that you can just brush it under the carpet, or it can be relaxed, it can be ignored. We've become like that. So the concerned agencies should start whipping. Only then I think we'll be able to address this.
Ma'am, as you talked about the political will, I believe that's one of the fundamentals for bringing out a lot of change, because we live in a day and age where uh, people are ruling us, not democratically doing stuff. So there's a study that says, so in US, the leaders, the top elite political party leaders own the fossil fuels mines, or maybe those petroleum industries. And that is why there are very less incentives in US for electric vehicles, and they are encouraged to sell the electric vehicles outside of US and make profits there, but not in US, because their share of uh, you know they are at the forefront of the supply chain. Similarly, in India as well, a lot of political leaders, or maybe the elite power people, own very big infrastructural development companies. So as you told about that, airports are doing stuff like that and whatnot. And a lot of contracts for construction of these airports or these big infrastructural projects are given to big leaders who have political links, because they want their profits to come in, and they people have there. It has to be a self-conscious thing where people have to think about, do they want to make profits, or do they really want to conserve or do something for the environment?
Yeah, so this takes me back to the provision in the Constitution, Article 39 of the Constitution, I will read it out. And every state is supposed to follow this. So Article 39 basically says that the state shall, in particular, direct its policy towards securing that the citizens, men and women, equally have the right to an adequate means of livelihood, that the ownership and control of the material resources of the community are so distributed as best to subserve the common good. C, that the operation of the economic system does not result in the concentration of wealth and means of production to the common detriment. D, that there is equal pay for equal work for both men and women. E, that the health and strength of workers, men and women, and the tender age of children are not abused, and that citizens are not forced by economic necessity to enter avocations unsuited to their age or strength. And F, that children are given opportunities and facilities to develop in a healthy manner and in conditions of freedom and dignity, and that childhood and youth are protected against exploitation and against moral and material abandonment. So in Article 39, the A, B, C, and D are very critical points when we are discussing, resources and who owns them, who operates them, who manages them. Unfortunately, again, Article 39 has been completely violated when allocations of these resources, the natural resources, have been made. Not all natural resources are public commons. It belongs to the public of this country. How does any one person have access to particular mineral, be it coal, be it oil, and you allow that person to become rich and influence the government to make certain decisions? So that is where we have made, as a country, we have made a lot of mistakes in the past. Given the way the country is going, it is time to rectify that. It is time to get back all our natural resources and put it back in the government. The government is a custodian of all these resources. It belongs to all the people, and how it is managed, used, should be a decision that is collectively addressed by the public. That needs to change in the country, and until we do that, we will continue to see the disparities between the rich and the poor growing, and we will continue to see the rich influencing the decisions made by the governments. It will largely be governance led by the elite.
Okay. Uh, thank you very much, ma'am, for providing such an enlightening session. And with the permission of Chair, you only, we would like to move forward with the formal vote of thanks. Uh,
Sure. Please.
uh, as we have come to the end of the session for the week 6 of Understanding the Nuances of Climate Change in Indian Subcontinent, Cohort 2.0, a 2-month immersive online introductory certification course as part of our online international Monsoon School program. We'll try to have today's speakers sessions in the future, and we'll inform you regarding that as well. I, Dhruv Tapadia, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI New Delhi. We are grateful for your time and energy, and for Mrs. Bhargavi S Rao ji for taking out their valuable time and allowing us to learn from their expertise. We thank all of our participants for raising pertinent questions and actively participating in today's deliberation. We look forward to welcoming you to the next week on September 14th for week 7 of this training course for our session with Professor Sas Biswas ji, Professor and Head, Department of Forestry of Dolphin, Postgraduate Institute of Biomedical and Natural Sciences, Dehradun, and Visiting Professor, IMPRI. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube and listening to to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in our future in our IMPRI #Web Policy Learning and #Web Policy Talk. Wishing you all a very good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.